Okay. Hello, everybody. So welcome to this webinar. Hope your Monday has started nicely with a bit of sunshine and a few sprinkles of rain in Dublin anyway. So thank you all for joining. Today we're going to have a webinar building Ireland's offshore wind supply chain, RWE's approach. It's hosted today by the Irish T-Shore Offshore Wind Energy CoVE, which is part of the wider European Network for Offshore Wind Energy Education for the T-Shore network. And today it's myself, Darrell Horgan, and Nuala Carr. We're both part of the T-Shore project. And then speakers today from RWE will be Jordan O'Neill and Sean Grace. So I'm just going to do a very quick introduction to the Irish CoVE and the T-Shore network of CoVEs, and then pass it over to Jordan and Sean, who will then go through RWE and Dublin Array and their approach to supply chain and skills for the offshore industry. So T-Shore is a CoVE European funded, Erasmus Plus funded project that we have completed 3 years so far. We've established 6 regional CoVEs in Ireland, Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands, North and South, and Norway. The goal and the objectives is to kind of create collaborating across borders, sharing knowledge, skills, and best practices, allowing that cross-border collaboration to share success stories, knowledge, expertise through events like this, webinars like this as well, and kind of trainer programs that we did within the project. And it's all in view of strengthening the offshore wind industry. One of the fundamental benefits and positive results and continuous results from the T-Shore project has been able to share those expertise. As each region is at a different stage of offshore development, we all have our own expertise, own strengths and knowledges that we can share across each other just by collaborating, by talking to each other and networking at different kind of stages in the calendar. If we look closer to Ireland, we established our CoVE last November at the Irish Wind Energy Ireland's trade show. And then since then, it has given us a platform to kind of host events, which we had an event last May in the Guinness Storehouse, where we had a lovely panel session, and we had our T-Shore partners from across Europe come to Dublin, as well as the Irish stakeholders, and we had a nice panel session, and then obviously webinars like this, and we want to kind of continue that collaboration as we go forward. And I just have a short video which kind of highlights what the Irish CoVE is about. There is meant to be music, but it's not playing at the moment, but there is no words, so it's all a reading video. So it's just a kind of quick infographic video of the Irish CoVE, and I'm now going to pass it over to RWE. So if anyone isn't a member of the Irish CoVE, we do encourage you to reach out, and we can kind of discuss how you can kind of engage with the CoVE. So I'm going to stop sharing here now, and I'm going to pass it over to Jordan.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you guys. First off, really appreciate the opportunity to present today and be part of the webinar. Quick introduction, my name is Jordan O'Neill. I'm the Supply Chain Development Manager at RWE, and I'm here today with my colleague Sean as well. Sean, did you want to do a quick intro before I dive into the slides?
Yeah, hi guys. Again, thanks for having us. It's much appreciated. So yeah, Sean Grace, I'm the Communications and Stakeholder Manager with RWE Renewables. And towards the end of the presentation, I'll just give an overview of where we are with Dublin Array specifically, how we got here and what it looks like going forward. So thanks, Jordan.
Great. Cheers, Sean. And before I crack on, to confirm, can you see the slides?
All clear.
Great. There's a bit of a pause there, and I was slightly worried, but all good. Cool. So yeah, title of today's presentation is Building a Strong, Resilient Offshore Wind Supply Chain. It was quite tricky to really pull together the content for this presentation, given the sort of wide range of experiences RWE have in developing offshore wind. So I've tried to cover a range of topics, and there's a wide variety of individuals and companies on this call as well. So hopefully some of the information and content is going to be interesting and applicable to the industry or sector that you're representing. And it'll be myself and Sean running through the slides today. So I wanted to kick things off with key messages, really. And the sort of three key messages linked to this presentation today are really about raising that awareness of the range of opportunities and contributions needed for an informative, realistic, and timely manner, aligning with Ireland's existing strengths and priorities. So I'm going to dive into that a little bit more throughout this presentation, and each of the slides are kind of applicable to each of these key messages as well. Again, collaboration, you hear that word thrown around a lot in the industry. However, it is still very, very important. A key message is fostering that industry-wide collaboration, especially in Ireland, is really important in my opinion. Also with that tandem focus on supply chain and skills development. And again, taking an all-island approach, which is something that we've discussed over the last sort of 12 to 18 months in relation to fostering that industry collaboration. And again, directly linked to that is the cluster development and the cluster landscape in Ireland. Again, from our experience in the UK, it's really important to sort of develop that cluster landscape and take it in the right direction as early as possible. And one of the things that we have been discussing and promoting and engaging with the supply chain on is about developing a umbrella organization that encompasses the regions and the key bodies and ensures that that work that's happening on the ground, people are working together to really maximize those opportunities. However, there's a lot of really, really good work that's happening within the regions, especially in Ireland, and it's all about retaining that flexibility and that approach, really. So they're the key messages from me, and I'm going to dive into a little bit more about RWE now. Some of you may be familiar with the company, some of you not. We've got experience across the entire value chain. The company, I think, employs, I can't remember exactly the number off the top of my head, but globally several thousand people. And in-house, we've got hundreds of experts really on every single topic within the sector, who have worked on complex projects and innovations and sustainable solutions that we've needed to pull together to really develop offshore wind. And yeah, 20 years in the business as well, which is amazing. I've definitely not been in the industry for that long, but some of my colleagues have, and it's amazing to have those individuals to lean on and learn from as well. And you can see a few sort of key facts and figures there really associated with us and what we've developed over the last 20 years. So RWE in the UK and Ireland, as you can see there from the image on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a significant number of offshore wind farms. I'm not sure if you can see it clearly, but the sort of greenish circles, they're the ones that are currently in operation. The blue ones are under construction, and the yellow are in development. And you can see we've sort of, over the last 20 years, been developing these offshore wind farms in a wide variety of locations, where each one has had its unique elements that we've needed to tackle as a company to ensure the successful delivery of those projects. I think it's important to note that the UK and Ireland are key strategic markets for us, and we are looking to continue to develop and expand our portfolio and continue our sort of position as the leading player in offshore wind. And we are investing today, and again, we've got plans to expand our footprint as well. And you can see a sort of few facts and figures there in the bullet points at the bottom of the screen. I won't read through each of them, but I think the image speaks for itself really in terms of our experience, and back to that sort of in-house experience that we've got. It's it's fantastic to work with a lot of the colleagues that I do on Dublin Array in Ireland, and also some of the projects in the UK. So bringing it closer to Ireland again, I'm talking about offshore wind in this presentation, but we've got interest in battery storage, onshore and offshore wind, especially in Ireland. We've got one operational onshore wind farm and 10 in development, and you can see from the map of Ireland there on the right hand side of the screen, there's quite a lot of activity happening, which is great to be involved with. So that was a quick taster really of the company, what we do and how we do it and who's involved. I think if you haven't heard of RWE before, then it's well worth checking out the website. Lots of fantastic information on there, and some really good videos and content and images that sort of present what we do within the sector. And there's also specific project websites for each of the developments, so you can get the access to newsletters and things like that. So if there is a specific region or development that's particularly interesting to you, then I'd highly recommend going ahead and doing that. So our approach to supply chain development, this is highlighting some of what we do. I will go into a little bit more about my specific role, but we do truly recognize suppliers as being the backbone to our success. And throughout our journey, we've sought to really maximize that local and regional supplier content and opportunities. And we work in partnership with our skilled and diverse supply network as best we can. Together, since we've been doing this, we've been at the forefront of the innovation and driven both regional and industry-wide success. And yeah, it's great to be part of that process. Within the UK, we have, I think, a total of 7 supply chain development managers, and they work on sort of, I guess, within the regional clusters and work on those individual developments, but we all do talk to each other each week and engage with each other and find out what's happening across the UK. So a little bit more about my role. It's definitely a bit of a jack of all trades kind of role, and you can see there's a lot that we do. It's depending on the stage of the project and what project we work on, there's lots of different things happening. So that can range from ORES or CFD eligibility, and that's very closely linked to supply chain policy development. Within that, of course, we build those developer supplier relationships and try and figure out how best to do that. It's been a journey, and we've developed strategies and platforms to enable us to have that more open dialogue, that easier engagement with the supply chain, and introduce those strategic approaches. And yeah, we work closely with procurement as well. We work closely with bid managers. We work closely with the sort of policy and external affairs individuals within the company. So yeah, the supply chain role itself is quite diverse, and involved in lots of different things, and each day is definitely not the same. So it's yeah, a really interesting role. So a couple of examples here really of the UK. Obviously, we've been developing offshore wind in the UK, as I mentioned, for 20 plus years. So we've got some great examples of supply chain engagement and yeah, real examples of successful stories really of working within the supply chain. You can see Gwynter Moore there, Sophia, Triton Knoll, Galloper and Rampion. These are 5 of our offshore wind farms that we've developed. And there's a few sort of case studies there as well. A lot of this information, like I previously mentioned, is available on the website. So if you did want to dive into a little bit more detail, then you definitely can. But it's evidencing really what I've said we do, in the sense of we have these real stories of engaging with the supply chain and working with suppliers local to the region. And obviously closely tied into that come the economic benefits and that the job creation, and that's intrinsically linked. And then the other element is the opportunities across the life cycle of an offshore wind farm. So when a new entrant is looking at the market, or whether a company is thinking about entering the offshore wind sector, it's really important to understand the opportunities across the life cycle of an offshore wind farm. And interestingly, decommissioning is at the bottom there, but that's a conversation that's popped up quite a lot recently as well. And obviously the process of an offshore wind farm goes from the planning and development stage, and there's timelines associated with that are huge. But then obviously that transitions through the structure installation, the commissioning, the O&M phase, which can be anywhere between 20, 25 years plus, and then the decommissioning and repowering as well. So yeah, it's helpful to consider the life stages of an offshore wind farm, and understanding the areas ranging from consenting and development and into construction, operation and decommissioning as well. So Ireland's strengths for a stronger future. There's lots of amazing activity happening in Ireland. I've highlighted a few here. Obviously, there's a huge, enormous untapped renewable resource within Ireland. There's lots of environmental consultancies, marine designers, fishing and ex-fishing communities, with a broad distribution of ports, with significant O&M capability, lots of innovation, and decarbonisation targets that we're aligned with and supporting, and believe the development of offshore wind in the country is going to significantly contribute to that. So taking it back a step to the UK really, I just wanted to highlight this briefly, which is the Industrial Growth Plan. This is for the UK, and it represents a significant effort to capitalise on the economic and environmental opportunities presented by a rapidly growing sector, which is the offshore wind industry. So if you're not aware of the IGP, it's definitely worth checking out. It essentially highlights the priorities and objectives and actions and the investment requirements for the sector to really be successful, and for the UK to really continue its drive for taking the lead within the offshore wind sector. And as you can see at the top of the screen there, there's a few of the the 5 sort of categories that have been highlighted from the report. And it's really interesting. It's a fundamental document that allows us to really prioritize some of the sort of key technologies within the UK. And just to highlight those, as you can see, it's advanced turbine technology, industrialized foundations and substructures, cables, so future electrical systems and cables, smart environmental services, and then next generation insulation and O&M. I also wanted to highlight a recent publication by Everose, which was commissioned by Intertrade Ireland. The report is really interesting. It highlights a significant potential for SMEs in the offshore and hydrogen sectors across Ireland. Again, it does support that coordinated all-Ireland approach that I previously mentioned when it comes to clusters, and the requirement for that as well. It highlights the challenges such as infrastructure capacity and skills shortages that need to be addressed. If you haven't checked out the report, I'd highly recommend it. It's 150 so pages of really good content. So what are we doing to continue this successful development of offshore wind? I think it was 24 months ago-ish that we introduced STEP, which is our sort of unique approach to supplier engagement. Over time, our approach has become more holistic, and we are striving to maximize the opportunities for our projects progressing through development, and that really kickstarted the conversation around STEP ballpark 2 years ago. It's a process that we've been learning as we go along. We've definitely made a few mistakes along the way, and we've had some really positive and constructive criticism and some not so positive and constructive criticism, but we've taken all of that on board as best we can, and we're continuously pushing this to really learn how best to engage with the supply chain. So that's feedback that we receive is highly valuable. Within STEP, there are kind of 3 key steps here. So I previously mentioned about project websites. This is essentially a website per development, so it allows you to really look at the details of that project, what's happening, updates, timelines, newsletters, and the activity on the ground, really, which is really important to keep up to date. The second step is the platform that we use, so you can register as a supplier, and it gives us access to your details, and that has an open search functionality as well. So if you were interested to see what suppliers have signed up, you can simply go on the STEP website and search for that and see who has registered. And then we hold supplier engagement days. So we hosted one for Dublin Array. Can't remember the exact date, but essentially we gathered, I think, 100 different companies from within the supply chain, and had a full day, really, project updates, sort of roundtable discussions, and yeah, amazing, really insightful, lots of discussion within the room, and really successful. So we've hosted that for Dublin Array. We've done that for other projects in the UK and Ireland as well. But yeah, the main sort of objectives for us within STEP are to really sort of flag the capabilities of the supply chain to the tier 1s and the tier 2s, and continue that core engagement, really, with the tiers throughout the tiers, so tier 2s, tier 3s, and communicate timelines and updates, really. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about STEP, and just give you a sort of flavor, really, of what the process looks like. So the supplier directory, this is quite a simple process of selecting your primary business sector, the projects that you might be interested in, a brief description as well. It takes around 15 minutes to populate that. Some of you on the call may have already done so, some of you might not have. Yeah, I'd highly recommend doing so if you haven't. This is an example from our supplier engagement days, which I have already touched upon, but again, we are always seeking to engage and understand from suppliers what's happening on the ground. And these days really sort of aim to provide that information that will help the local supply chain companies position themselves most effectively for potential future opportunities with us. And we really push forward that sort of networking, open dialogue, knowledge sharing, and really that development of innovative solutions. Another element of the STEP process as well is workshops that we do. So at Global Offshore Wind, not this year but last year, we hosted a roundtable sort of workshop session, really, where we looked at the future of secondary steel. Within the room we had, I think it was, yeah, it says on the slide actually, 12 to 15 sort of companies within the room, and had that sort of open dialogue, open discussion. and arrived at a range of sort of next steps to further that proactiveness for how we can help the growth of the supply chain and be of benefit to RWE at the same time. And yeah, it's amazing to see the natural synergies that pop up, the conversations. Some companies and individuals are well aware of each other, and others maybe not so much. And yeah, it's great to be in the position where we can facilitate that conversation and have that open discussion. And STEP is really something that allows us to promote and actively do that, which is great. And I've put this in as a highlight, really. I think it's quite easy to have your head down the rabbit hole sometimes within the sort of sector that you work in, or even the sort of work stream that you work in. And the BVG Guide to an Offshore Wind Farm is a fantastic sort of website and bit of information that you can have access to. And I do believe it is due for a update this year, very soon. And you can essentially go through the development and project management phase, the manufacturing phase, the O&M phase, and also the sort of decommissioning and repowering side of things. And it's quite interactive. It's quite useful. I found it really interesting, and I think if you've been in the industry for 4 days or 40 years, it's a really useful bit of information and website to have access to, and really gives you a insight into the intricacies and different stages of an offshore wind farm as well. So I've talked a little bit about tiers and within the supply chain. I wanted to highlight here a sort of quick diagram of how that is. Obviously, this is a very high level example, but it kind of shows the developer at the top and the tier ones that we then engage with, including the WTGs, the inter-array cables, the export cable, etc. And then the kind of second tier supply chain that work with them, and pulled together a couple of facts really at the top as well, which I'll just read out briefly. So essentially, as a developer, so RWE, we are the construction project manager, if you like. We'll secure the lease and then the route to market, and then we'll onboard suppliers to carry out the work on our behalf. The procurement strategies associated with that development then can differ per project. Some go down the EPCI route, and others opt for a more itemized process. And also the fact that offshore wind developer is responsible for directly contracting between 6 to 12 of the key service and component packages only, leaving 85% of the subcontracting to be carried out via tier ones and tier twos. So I think the key message here is, yes, it's really important to engage and speak to developers, but tier twos and tier ones are also extremely valuable contacts to have and important companies to speak to when it comes to the work opportunities, general engagement, and developments that are happening within Ireland as well. So how can the supply chain prepare itself? I think RWE and others will be investing all around the world into offshore wind, but especially into the UK and Irish markets. It's really important to be aware of the market and upcoming opportunities. Continuously, listening in, tuning into webinars such as this, going to events, things like that. Point 2 there, so a strong supply chain. Strong supply chain is vital to investment. These need to be collaborative to avoid being hampered by the weakest link really and components in shortest supply. Number 3, understanding where you fit in the supply chain. I think this is really important. Aligning what you can offer with a project or tier 1/2 supplier. This sometimes does require research and engagement and actively engaging with developers and the wider supply chain as well. The policy landscape is really important. I think in the UK, this has been changing quite significantly over the last couple of years, especially with the introduction of the Clean Energy Bonus and the transition from AR6 to AR7, and now looking towards AR8. The policy landscape is very important to be aware of. And then number 5 there as well. So to maximize opportunities and preparation really, and being prepared to work with developers and tier ones and feed in challenges, suggestions, ideas, and engage, speak to people and reach out and continue pushing that as well. So a few examples of companies in Ireland, some amazing companies that are working on the ground and supporting projects globally as well from Ireland, and these are worth reaching out to if you think there might be a collaborative opportunity, or you've heard of these companies but might not have spoken to. We've got a few relationships with a couple of these companies, and it's always really interesting to hear and listen and engage with the supply chain within Ireland. So if you're thinking you might have a product or a opportunity and it links quite closely with some of the supply chain within Ireland, then I'd highly recommend having that all Ireland approach and really engaging with the other suppliers. I've mentioned skills a couple of times on this call. Skills is really important. We have sort of in-house team of individuals that are really pushing the sort of skills development within Ireland. There's lots of really good work happening, and my role is quite closely associated with what they're doing. So yeah, there's quite a significant overlap really in terms of what we do there. When it comes to skills, we do host a skills workshop as well. We've done one of these for Dublin Array in Ireland, and yeah, it was fantastic. It was a really great day. It was a slightly smaller version of the supplier engagement day that we did, and yeah, we had some fantastic conversations. There's quite a lot of information on this slide, so I won't read it all out, but I think a key thing for me is supporting the whole career. So when it comes to promoting the sector or promoting the skills within the renewable energy industry more generally, it needs to be across the whole career. So whether that's primary education, secondary education, all the way through to upskilling and continued professional development. Also taking into consideration the talent pool, so whether that's underemployed, unemployed, economically inactive, there's a huge variety of individuals within the talent pool, and through that the diversity and inclusion lens, including gender, ethnicity, social mobility, and disabilities as well. It's really important to consider all of them. Again, employment and training. We're involved with this. There's opportunities to collaborate. Developers are doing a lot of work on the ground, tier one, supply chain, and really sort of supporting that transition as well is a key element. So whether that's military, fossil fuel based sectors, etc. I have a few images here. So this is from the skills event that we hosted. I've already touched upon sort of what we did there, but again, it was a really great day, and yeah, hopefully we'll be hosting a few more in the not so distant future as well. R&D, again, as a leading developer, our search for those innovative solutions. Sustainability is really at the core of our strategy, and we drive via the projects in key areas of local benefits, biodiversity, climate change, and also circular economy. The sustainability projects investigate environmental impacts, and they gain valuable knowledge and understanding in effects of biodiversity and ecosystem services such as habitat provision, nutrient cycling, and water quality. And R&D is such a wide topic. We have again an in-house team that focuses on R&D, And on the next slide, I've got a couple of images of some of the sort of work that we've carried out to date. The list is quite large, and I've just highlighted a couple here. One really cool one is the Arc Marine eco-engineered reef cubes. This is a sort of very recent announcement, actually. Arc Marine launched the world's first full-scale pilot project using the eco-engineered reef cubes as scour protection to protect the turbine foundations. And whilst doing so, as you can see from the image there, those sort of little nooks and crannies essentially enhance the marine biodiversity at the same time. And they're providing us with over 75,000 of those cubes, which are made in the UK from low carbon recycled materials. And they're going to be deployed on our Rampion offshore wind farm down on the south coast, which is, yeah, amazing. The sort of second row of images I've got on the screen there are a few examples from the RWE innovation competition. Company called Seagrown won that last year. Seagrown are, well, they're pioneering an innovative solution that really utilizes the offshore cultivation of seaweed, including kelp, as a sort of nature-based solution to increase the, again, marine biodiversity, but also help carbon and nitrogen uptake and oxygen release. Really, really interesting stuff. And again, cargo drones, again, there's a little write-up on there, and also cable monitoring. So yeah, really interesting space. There's lots of work going on. I know there's some amazing R&D that's happening in Ireland at the moment as well, and we're always keen to listen in and learn a little bit more about that. Cluster development. For us, clusters are really important. Quick lesson from the UK. Over the course of the last 10-15 years, there's several clusters that have developed alongside where offshore wind projects are being built. And the clusters within the UK are really realizing the importance of that national cohesion, and that it can often be a case of working together is essentially better together. You can see there where, you know, around the UK there's some significant cluster activity, and the little table really highlights a few of those. What we're really sort of driving for now in Ireland is engaging with the activity that's happening on the ground within the cluster landscape, and understanding who's doing what and what the overarching goal is there. So yeah, if you're involved in clusters, yeah, please reach out. We're engaging with several at the moment, and we're yeah, continuing to participate in that engagement as well. Towards the back end of last year, we hosted a mini workshop really, where we talked about cluster development. I can't quite remember how many people we had in the room, but it was a really, really great conversation. Very insightful. There's lots of amazing activity that's happening in Ireland, but to ensure that kind of cohesion, we're really pushing for that kind of umbrella approach, where there's an overarching organisation that helps drive the cluster landscape in the right direction within Ireland. And I've just highlighted here some of the key organisations and associations that we've engaged with to date. There are many more. This is just a few, and there's lots of fantastic work that's happening on the ground. And yeah, we're looking forward to continuing the conversation with some of these establishments as well. And just to finish off here, myself and Helen Thomas, who's the supply chain lead in the UK, we wrote a little thought piece on supply chain and cluster development, which goes into a lot more detail than what I've mentioned just now. But yeah, definitely worth a read if that sort of cluster landscape is something that is is interesting to you. So I'd highly recommend checking that out. And I think that's it from my side. I appreciate that was probably a lot of slides and a lot of information, but I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Sean Grace, who's the communications and stakeholder manager on Dublin Array, and he's going to run through a few more details about the project timeline and other details associated with Dublin Array. And hopefully at the end we might have a bit of time to answer your questions. But before I hand over to Sean, I just wanted to also say thanks for listening. And yeah, if some of this stuff has been interesting, then please do reach out. I think our emails are going to be shared, and we're always happy to have a conversation and try and answer any questions that you may have. So yeah, thank you. And I'll pass over to Sean, if that's okay.
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, I'll be brief enough. I can get through in about 10 minutes and give us some time for some questions at the end. I have a couple of slides just focusing on the Dublin Array project specifically. And just on Jordan's last point regarding that thought piece, and also a lot of content I will have here, our website, dublinarray.com, that's where that thought piece is housed, along with other interactive articles you might have an interest of, or project information you might want to look at. So it's a good resource. If we can just kick things off, Jordan, and onto the first slide. Yeah, starting firstly with the $1 million question, I guess, the project timelines and the variabilities within that. So here you can see the Dublin Array project timeline as things stands, just highlighting the variability of, I guess, us being engaged in the consenting and planning process at the minute. And given the fact that offshore wind is new to Ireland, particularly at this scale, things just take a little bit longer to progress. So bearing both the planning and potentially judicial uncertainty, this is the timeline as it stands, with us submitting our planning permission in 2025, with the hopeful outcome of consent award in 2026, and then progressing from there. So that's that. On to the next slide, Jordan. So the Dublin Array project, in its totality, some key facts and figures here. It's located 10 kilometers off the east coast from kind of South Dublin down to North Wicklow. It's across 59 square kilometers across the Kish and Bray banks, which are navigational hazards, which is to the benefit of the project of not interfering with shipping lanes in and out of the busy Dublin Bay and Dublin Port. The ownership is 50-50 ownerships with local developer Sergis Energy, who developed the site pre-RWE's involvement, although RWE is the lead developer for Dublin Array. The maximum export capacity is up to 824 megawatts. And we've entered the consenting process with some variability regarding the number of turbines and height of turbines, but there will be up to 50 turbines, between 39 and 50. And the individual tip height again has a variability within what we've entered into the consenting process, between 270 and 310 meters. On the Kish and Bray banks, there's information there on the water depths and site conditions. I won't go into them specifically. But our landfall location, which you can see on the map to the left, is in Shanganagh Cliffs, which is an urban residential area in South Dublin. And I'll go into a bit more information on that. And the grid connection point is at Carrick, the existing Carrickmine substation, which is electrical transmission node for Dublin and the greater Dublin region, and the demand that comes with that. So that's quite important. And we'll be constructing our own substation in quite close proximity to Carrickmines in a place called Ballyogan. And just on the title there, I'll just touch on again for those who aren't too much up to speed on the offshore wind industry in Ireland. Dublin Array is part of phase 1. That is 6 projects with progressed phase 1 4 with ORS contracts, and they're overall, along with phase 2 Tannua, supporting 5 gigawatts of the offshore wind target by 2030. So that's the general direction of traffic there. You can go to the next slide, Jordan. Sorry. So the background on Dublin Array, again, in terms of the graphics, there's an overview of the project, both in terms of the seabed lease area, the area for our export cables and then the onshore transmission network. And also you can see a green dot to the north on that map, which shows our operational and maintenance base, which is proposed for Dublin Array Harbour, and I have some slides on that. So in 2022, the project was awarded a maritime area consent. I guess the next big milestone following on from that would have been a grid connection assessment that was completed by AirGrid. And again, just highlighting that connection point being at the Carrick Mines substation in South Dublin. Dublin Array was then successful in ORES 1 in June 2023. And this was the first offshore wind electricity market auction. And then I guess the the main significant milestone remaining to progress Dublin Array as a fully, I guess, secured consent process is that the planning permission that was submitted in February 2025 this year. And again, we're just working towards the variability of that timeline and working hard to hopefully, progress that and provide everything we need to provide to put us in the best opportunity to have consent award as early as possible, bearing in mind that could be 26 or as late as 2027, depending on how that progresses. Thanks, Jordan. I guess the three main areas of benefits for Dublin Array, when we talk about offshore wind and the multitude of benefits, this list could be quite long, but just to stick to a few benefits that are really quite locally aligned or nationally aligned. Jordan touched on the decarbonisation targets in Ireland. I think 80% renewable electricity by 2030. I think in January 2025 in Ireland, I think it was around 33% for renewable electricity. So there's still a way to go on that. The good thing being that wind, specifically onshore wind, it plays a significant role in that makeup of the percentage as things stand at the minute. And that could well put us in a good position as we progress to offshore wind and make up that gap by 2030. The Dublin Array project will offset over 1 million tonnes of CO2 annually. I've talked about the capacity. Again, that 824 megawatts equates to about 770,000 average Irish homes, which is a significant role in that decarbonisation effort. If you think of the Republic on its own, or the population of 5 to 5.5 million, that's really, really making a dent in that decarbonisation effort of the electricity grid. And I think a key role to play alongside that as well, and it is interlinked with environmental benefits, is in the current climate and geopolitically, globally. I think it's very important that we play a role in what is Ireland's stated goal of energy independence. So equally as important in the times that we live. Community benefits, I have a full slide on community benefits. I think there might have been a question on that already, so I'll leave that largely to that slide. But again, it's up to 6.5 million per year for 20 years. So over the lifetime of that ORES contract, you're looking in the region of up to 130 million. And again, it's really focused and the structures and governance will be so that the community plays really a leading role in the distribution of that fund. Socioeconomic benefits, huge investment for these projects, everyone knows that. Jobs for construction, also in terms of during the operational phase, both direct and indirect jobs, all referenced there. And I guess the long-term impact of these operational projects for as long as they're in place, 25, 30, 35 years. You can see independent analysis here showing that the operations of these projects can support between 400, or this project specifically, could support 450 to 650 GVA gross value added to the region over that time period, to jobs, supply chain, upskilling, and everything in between over that extended period, as I had said. So it's quite significant. Thanks, Jordan. The onshore export cable, I won't go into too much detail. It just gives an overview. Again, those that aren't too familiar with Ireland or Dublin or the locality, the image on the right just shows, central Dublin, as you can see, and the project being in quite a densely urban area in the southern suburbs of Dublin, approximately 8 kilometres from the landfall to the construction of the onshore substation in Ballyogan, which then it's very short distance to the existing Carrick Mines existing substation, which again is is one of the electrical nodes, transmission nodes in Dublin, and very much that greater Dublin area is continuously constrained and wanting for demand. So that's very important and a positive element of the project. Thanks, Jordan. The operational maintenance base is proposed for Dublin Array. So the planning submission that was entered in February was for the full, I guess, envelope of the project, from turbines to the array to the onshore, to the export cables, landfall, and onshore, but also the operational maintenance base would have been submitted as part of that overall planning submission. The proposal is for the operational maintenance base to be located on St. Michael's Pier. For those who know Dublin Array Harbour, it's the former Stena Line terminal you can see on the top right-hand side. So towards the end of that facility, there's a smaller facilities and shed unit that would be demolished, and the new facility for the operations and maintenance base would be built alongside that pier. I guess the architectural design is very much in accordance with a maritime overview, and it would that's where it would sit. I think one of the most significant things in the last few weeks is that we've been working very closely with the Dublin Array County Council over the last few years to bring them along on foreseeing the benefits of having an operational and maintenance base in Dublin Array. And we've been quite happy to realise in the recent weeks that the draft master plan for Dublin Array Harbour has included within the plans for St. Michael's Pier our proposal for the Dublin Array operations and maintenance base, which is something that we're happy with, but we're also conscious of the fact that it's a draft master plan and we have a consenting process ongoing, so continued engagement is going to be vital. But it's a good first step, and we're very pleased with that. I think lastly, I don't think the interlinks are there, but I'll add on the very last point. I can add them to the slides before they're circulated, but there's a variety of institutions and entities that have been able to put forward the considerable benefits, both in terms of the industry, but also for local communities of being hosts of these offshore wind operational bases. And they're good resources to fall back on the facts and figures. So I'll make sure they're included before the slides are circulated. Thanks, Jordan. And then lastly, before I finish up, the Community Benefit Fund. So a bit more detail. I'll do a bit of reading through this slide, really. It's in the region of 6.5 million per annum. That falls back on the ORES terms and conditions, which specify €2 per megawatt hour. When the calculation is done off of the outputs for Dublin Array, that brings you up to 6.5 per annum figure over the 20 years. I think we're not aware globally of any community benefit funds that are in this region. It's very much an outlier. It's not just Dublin Array. There are, I guess, 2 other ORS1 projects progressing who have community benefit funds associated with it as well. So, the impact that these can have, if done correctly, can be very significant to the region. So early payments will become available during the construction period, so it won't be just on operation. The Community Benefit Fund Committee, so before I get on to the Community Benefit Fund Committee, I'm going to skip the steps. So as we progress, and we get a better idea of where we are in terms of the planning process into 2026, we will initiate the procurement of a fund administrator, and that fund administrator will be put in place to put together the governance and the structures to provide guidance for the Community Benefit Fund Committee, and the committee will be recruited by that fund administrator. So the fund administrator is really the next step, and we hope to start the procurement for that next year, and then give time for that fund administrator to independently set up the structures and governance for the fund that RWE would obviously feed into, and recruit that committee that will be made up of the local community in order to make the on the ground decisions for different projects and initiatives. There is oversight for the Community Benefit Fund to be registered with SEAI, and I think that's an important fact. And then lastly, some key priorities and needs in order to justify the criteria that is likely to be put in place would be that to consider communities in particular need of the sport, inclusion of coastal and marine communities, And then importantly, that any projects or initiatives align with the UN sustainability goals, which are quite wide-ranging and which is good. And funded projects to be reviewed every 3 years. And before I finish up, I just added a link, YouTube link, which just gives an overview of how a project in North Wales, an RWE offshore wind farm, Gwynty Moore, and they've just reached 10 years of operations where they spent 6 million in community initiatives, which is fantastic. But on the scale of what's going to be provided here, I guess quite small. But even at that, if you look at that video and look at some of the initiatives and projects and charities that they've supported through that, it's quite significant and it's quite exciting actually as well. So please have a look at that if you have the time. I think that's it for me. I think that's the last slide. And if there's any questions, we're kind of quite close, but I'm free to stay on and take any questions. That's no problem.
Yeah, cutting it quite fine. But I also think the slides are going to be distributed as well. So those links that you have seen within the slide packs, you'll be able to access them. I'm not sure if the T-Shore team had any further comments.
Oh, that's really good. Thanks very much for that, guys. So we do have 1 minute, but we have a few questions there for yourselves, guys. So Gavin McBride, what is the typical historical percentage of local content spent on RWE's existing projects, individual or combined? And what is RWE's planned local content spend on Dublin Array project?
That is a very good question. I don't have those answers off the top of my head, if I'm totally honest, but I'm more than happy to take that away. I think Gavin's got my contact details and I'm happy to pick that up as well to have a discussion. I'm not sure if Sean's got any further comments or ideas on that.
No, I think that's very much in your bucket, Jordan. But yeah, no, I guess anything like that we can take away and come back to you.
Super. Next question, Garrett Rentier. What is RWE's strategy regarding sector coupling, integrating the supplied offshore wind power with parts of the energy system? Is there a local focus and attempt to tailor to local opportunities?
Any ideas on that one, Sean?
I lost you towards the middle of what you said. Could you just repeat that there? Apologies.
So what is RWE's strategy regarding sector coupling, integrating the supplied offshore wind power with parts of the energy system? And then is there a local focus and attempt to tailor to local opportunities?
I guess the second part of the question I could probably answer. I'm not sure if I can answer the first part, so we'll have to take that away. I think it's important as well. You're kind of thinking of the market insofar of itself and other local opportunities and coupling with, progression. Some of the skills, what came up as part of our skills development day was that a lot of the skills and requirements that we would require in order to operate the Dublin Array wind farm are going to be job titles and skills that are required by a lot of other industries. If you think of the amount of infrastructure delivery, whether it's water, transport, or housing in Ireland at the minute, I think the operation of Dublin Array will need, a high proficiency of people trained as electricians, welders, rope operators, and health and safety operators, and things in between. There's going to be significant demand for that across the board, and those living in Ireland are very aware of the demands that there are for them positions at the minute. So at a higher level, it's not really for individual projects to decide. There is the Powering Prosperity strategy that is focused on building up the industry from the ground up, and I think it's important for us to have a focus on that over the coming years. But it needs to come from a higher level to see where the collaboration is across them kind of different job specifications, because it's going to become a bottleneck very quickly, not just in the offshore wind space, but across kind of infrastructure delivery and construction as one example.
And just the final question, it is for you, Sean, as well. Has RWE defined a boundary for the community benefit funds?
Yeah, no, that's from me, Sean.
No problem. Yeah. Do you say you're in Donegal? I'm not sure whether to go that far, but
yeah.
The community benefit fund will be independently managed by the independent fund administrator that's appointed through the procurement. RWE will have 2 non-voting members on the committee that's recruited by the fund administrator, but the governance and the structure will be set by both, the fund administrator and also what the terms and conditions are of ORES. So it's quite a significant fund. I don't think it's going to be for wildflowers and poppies, as good as all that kind of them projects are. It's going to have to be bigger and wider and more, you would think,
strategic,
regionally based, you'd imagine. Yeah. So without knowing, and very much indicating that decision and how that's set will be between, the specifications of the conditions and as the administrator independently decides, there will be a wide reach with regards to the community benefit fund. The project is visually, you can see the project when it's built from Hope to Greystones and everywhere in between. So, you'd imagine those who are hosting infrastructure, the operation base, the onshore substation, the likes, would be in a position to, on a weighted basis, have more funding available. But also, there will be a look at those that can visually, as they describe it, a visual impact. I don't see it as an impact because I like the visuals of the offshore wind, but for convenience sake, a visual impact of the project upon them.
Slightly biased.
Yeah, slightly biased. Will definitely be, in line, you'd imagine, to have a weighted investment opportunity as well.
Yeah, I studied that problem for a while, and it's not an easy boundary to define for offshore.
No, I wouldn't imagine. And we're so geographically close to Codling as well, to the south of us, who are, I think they're 1.1 gigawatt project. I think the southern end of our site and the northern end of theirs is 5 kilometers. It could be even less. So, and then the other ORS project to North Dublin off of Skerries. There's not a huge geographical difference between the three, and then the boundary in which they encompass upon it and the funds that are involved. It's going to have to be done in a very strategic way, but in any way, shape, or form, it's a lot of money, and it will be to the benefit of the region, and in particular coastal communities, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely.
If I could just jump in really quickly,
yeah.
I'll just highlight back to the original question, which I think was from Gavin in regards to local content commitments and things like that. As part of the process for ORES 1 and within the T&Cs, we did have to populate the PDPQ, which is the Project Delivery Plan questionnaire, is what the Q stands for. That is available online, so you can see what each developer involved in ORES 1 had to populate in terms of their, commitments to things like local content and what initiatives and engagements that we are conducting to develop that. But that's all accessible online, but I'm more than happy to take that conversation offline and address it in a bit more detail as well, so we can look to do that.
Super. As we have run over the time, I suppose we'll end it there. Thanks to everyone who's attended and for your attention. Thanks to RWE, and I hope you all have a lovely Monday. And we will share the slides and key information following this. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Really appreciate everyone listening. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Okay.